Welcome to our podcast, Parenting by the Pint. Enjoy the show.
Greetings, Minivan Mafia. Lauren and I are longtime friends from Chicagoland that love getting together to chat about life, kids, family, and beer.
Each week, we'll feature a brewery and sample at least 2 of their beers.
We'll also discuss a variety of topics ranging from parenting, pop culture, travel, marriage, and just about anything else that comes to mind. Greetings, everybody. Here we go. Time to record another sweet episode, right, Lauren?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. And tonight, just like every time, we are going to feature a brewery. And this week, we're going to talk about St. Errant Brewing, which is in Chicago, Illinois. Gosh, we've never been there before.
Chicago, yeah.
I know, a new exciting place.
We're going back. I feel like we've
Yeah.
taken some excursions recently, and
We went to Boston last week. That was fun, but I don't want to live there. You know, I want to live here.
Yeah, we're back. We're back home. So
yeah,
it
feels good. And St. Errant's a good place to visit if you're gonna come home.
Yeah.
So we're gonna start with a double dry hopped IPA called Blush Response, which I'm gonna tell you I have never had.
No, I haven't either. It's got a blue owl on the can, which is interesting.
He's got kind of like a creepy robot eye looking thing going on.
Yeah, I gotta figure Blush Response must mean something.
I was gonna say this has got to be a reference.
So the guy who does their can art, his name's Hugo Trejo. I believe it actually has it on. Yep, artwork by Hugo. So he does most, I think all, but I'm not 100%, so I would just say most of their can art. He also does some can art for More and Eris, and then a band as well. He's called Project Villain on Instagram, but actually in 2021 he was ranked one of their beer cans for Wander On by St. Errant was ranked, and I didn't even know this was ranking, top 10 best beer labels by USA Today for 2021. Wow. And it was a can art by Hugo. So kind of cool. He's definitely got some cool designs and stuff. So yeah, so anyways, that has nothing to do with the brewery really, but it is an interesting
it's a fun fact.
Art.
It's a fun fact. Yeah. I had no idea there were can art rankings.
I had no idea.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah. No clue whatsoever. I learn something new all the time.
I know. Well, and considering that we comment on can art pretty often in the podcast, I like to think that guess we're not the only ones.
Yeah, that is totally true. I do, especially when I feel like when I first started like into liking beer and figuring out what to pick beer before I really knew a lot of different breweries, like definitely can art jumps out at you, when you're walking down the aisle at the bottle shop or whatever, like it's either like, and for me it's either the ones that stand out or the ones that are very minimalistic, like one or the other is what catches my attention. But definitely can art serves a very important purpose in the beer world to get at whatever your target demographic is. So, but anyways, it's a cool blue owl. I have no idea what this means, but it looks pretty cool. I do love me some double dry hopped IPA.
Yeah, this is for the haze boys, man. I can't see through this at all.
Ooh, it's good though. Yeah, they're known for their super hazy IPAs, some interesting flavors, and then they've got a handful of stouts as well, but definitely they started out with some good hazy. So this is good. I like it.
Nice. Cool. Yeah,
anyways,
I really like it too.
Let's chat a little bit about
just right
St. Errant as we drink this IPA here. So they currently are brewing some out of Chicago. So St. Errant does not have their own brewery or tap room. They contract brew. So the two owners, they started out as home brewers, like the vast majority of people in the industry do. So they fell in love with kind of the New England style IPAs, took a bunch of trips to Vermont, out on the East Coast. And one of their first events actually was in 2016, the Oak Park Micro Brew Review. And they were actually started brewing out of Microphone in Elk Grove Village.
Okay.
So that's kind of where they first started contract brewing in like 2017-ish. They now contract brew out of Urban Brew Labs, which is what this one is from in Chicago. They do a lot of their stuff out of there, but they also, I believe, are contract brewing out of Temperance in Evanston as well. So they might be a handful out of both, but a lot of their stuff currently, at least, is out of Urban Brew Labs. So St. Errant actually literally just means the wandering saint. So they literally named it that because they are two brewers that are wandering brewers that go between different locations and brew. So they don't have a tap room. They are just kind of contracting here and there and everywhere, and they are the wandering brewers. So St. Errant seemed like a, good fit for their naming convention.
Yeah.
So.
We've talked about this like business model with brewing before, and I find it very intriguing. The idea of limiting your overhead, all that money that you would spend on space and
equipment and all that,
buying all the equipment, and not necessarily fully bypassing that step, but like allowing yourself to kind of invest more in your ingredients and your project than the space where the beer is brewed seems like a pretty brilliant idea in a lot of ways. I mean, obviously, I think like Hop Butcher, for example, I think has gotten big enough that perhaps that had a lot to do with why they are now looking at a space to brew and a tap room. And I 100% believe that they'll fill a tap room pretty regularly
for sure,
because they're so popular. But I think until a brewery reaches that point where they find they have a need for that sort of thing, it makes a lot of sense to contract brew.
Yeah, no, for sure. And honestly, I think that they can really get into what their niche kind of, types of beers are too.
Sure.
If you have your own brewery, you don't want to start huge, but you still need the capital to have a decent sized brewing operation. When you're contract brewing, you can do smaller batches of things and still make it worthwhile, versus if you have your own brewery, you really want to be maximizing all of that capacity and filling that. And you can't experiment as well when you want to be at, the brewing as much volume as you can. So at the point where you've really mastered some of the styles and some of the beers that you guys are good at, that's when, like Hop Butcher, that's when it makes sense to invest in a larger, your own operation. But I think contract brewing is a great idea. I mean, Untitled Arts is still one of my favorites, and they still contract brew out of Octopi out in, Wisconsin, and a handful of places will contract brew for a variety of different smaller named breweries, and people don't even realize that. I actually didn't even realize St. Errant had brewed out of Microphone back in a few years ago until I started looking up St. Errant and their history. So okay, one more, well, maybe not fun fact, but interesting thing I thought about St. Errant. So what really started me to first notice them was when they started making the adorable 8-ounce stubby cans.
Yes, the little buddy.
Yes. So they made actually one of the next beer we're going to drink. They made it in an 8-ounce can. They made a handful of some of their higher ABV stouts in 8-ounce cans. And that was the first time that I really noticed them, because I was like, this is adorable. And it's like
about
13+% ABV. So an 8-ounce was like perfect.
That is perfect.
So that's what, that was the first time I actually noticed them. Was I was like, this is adorable and it's perfect and it's the perfect amount for me
Yes.
for a high ABV beer, because I was like, it's little and it's great.
And you're drinking by yourself.
Yeah,
you're drinking
exactly.
it by
It's
yourself.
me, because my husband's not going to drink that.
Right. No.
So that was literally like my first notice of St. Aaron was their adorable little 8-ounce
baby
stout cans. Yes. So I thought that was like a cool thing. I don't know. Anyway, so that was the first time that I actually paid attention to them, and I was like, oh, this is so cool. I love these little cans.
I love that you mentioned that, because I completely made no connection that was St. Aaron. And now the moment you started talking about it, where you're like, oh, they started making these cans, and I was like, oh,
right?
Yes, the baby cans.
I loved them. So anyway, so that was what drew me in to St. Aaron, and to be like, oh, this is cool. Let me look into these guys a little bit. So anyway, so that was something. And I think there were a handful of breweries that actually did that. Part of it was the aluminum shortage during the pandemic too. And I'm sure that was some of it, but I was like, this is actually a perfect thing. I want them to continue doing it, because I'm like, 8 ounces of 11, 12, 13% ABV is like just the right amount.
Just right.
So
yeah, totally.
I loved that. So
that's
St. Aaron.
Fantastic. Yeah, good for them. Yeah, what a great little thing that they did for a time, and I would always appreciate.
I liked it. So anyway, so that's a little bit about St. Aaron. So anyways, so let's move on to our topic of the day.
Yeah, talking about tiny cans. We're going to go back in time a little bit and talk about tiny children a little. We're going to start there and see where this conversation takes us. This is a subject that has probably come up within episodes here and there, because it always kind of is in the background of every parenting experience that you have, right? So we're going to talk about judgmental parents, and we're going to try to be, we're going to try to be as general as possible to sort of cover as much ground as possible when it comes to this. I think a lot we're going to talk about is some of the early on judgmental stuff that you get from parents. I know that we both have some pretty strong feelings about avoiding judgment when it comes to seeing how other parents interact with their children. Before we started recording tonight, both you and I had a conversation about times where we have overreacted toward our children in some sort of situation, and had to kind of walk ourselves back and be like, dude, I went too far.
I need to calm down. I do. Yeah. Though I will say, as I was thinking about this topic, I wrote down a handful of things. I wrote down things from when they were small, but even more current, that I'm like, oh, I've totally done this, and I didn't even mean to be judgmental. So definitely interesting conversation. But yes, we will see where this takes us. And we will go from there.
Yeah. So this kind of sprouted from an article that I read online at some point about, things parents brag about, things that parents judge other parents for. And it's sort of like a poll, if you will, that was sort of taken on Reddit of things that tend to come out the most often. And like I said, most of these things kind of deal with younger children.
Sure.
But most of them, you could argue, can go through most of childhood. I would say, especially, for example, probably one of the biggest ones is reaching milestones.
Yeah.
And when you're a baby, when you're talking about a baby, you're talking about things like turning over and holding up their head and sitting and speaking or just making sounds.
All of those milestones.
Yeah. And I know you probably have a lot to say about this subject. What I will say is that because I've had 2 children, it's been very intriguing to me to see 2 people who grew up in exactly the same environment with the same parents in the same house go through milestones at such a different rate. Having one child speak a lot earlier than the other, and having and then vice versa, having that same child kind of plow through some physical milestones much earlier than the other sibling did. And it's funny to me because it really, in my opinion, kind of boiled down to, it kind of just is what it is. Those mile markers, whatever you want to call them, they just happen when they happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and
you know?
it is interesting. I say this a lot with the twins. Like, no matter they were raised, and even we're in the same classes together through
Sure.
preschool. Like, so they learned literally the exact same things, yet learned them at their own pace and to hit different milestones and learn different things, completely different. So it's kind of like that age-old like nature versus nurture thing, and it's
Right.
really a combination of both because they had the exact same things their whole lives. They spent the first 7 years of their life in the same bedroom. Like, so we read the
Sure.
same stories, we did the same things, like literally everything. And yet they were still so different when it hit different milestones and different academic things and whatnot. So very interesting. But yeah, I mean, there's certain things that parents are very judgmental about that truly don't matter, but everyone likes to compare themselves to each other. Like everyone,
Yeah.
whether they like it or it's instinctual or what, comparison. People compare themselves to other people,
We're
and their
competitive
kids.
creatures. I mean,
Yeah.
it's in our nature. I mean, even
Hmm.
as adults, like, you
Yeah.
talk about being a sore loser. We've talked about
Yeah.
cheering for sports teams and being happy or sad when a team wins or loses.
Hmm.
I mean, that stuff matters to you because you're competitive,
Yeah,
because
that's true.
that's how you feel, and it's easy and difficult at the same time to avoid competing with other parents when it
Yeah.
comes to their children's development or their children's progress or how your children are doing in certain ways.
Yeah, that's super interesting because really what it boils down to when a parent is bragging, it really isn't even bragging about their kids. It's they're trying to say how awesome of a parent they are
Right, as
because
though
their
it
kids
is
are.
their milestone.
Exactly. And that's really what it comes down to. It's not even I don't think it's even like, yes, you want your kids to do well, but at that age, it's really more, look what I taught my kid. Look what
Sure.
I'm doing. Look how well I'm parenting. And
Yeah,
that's
right.
kind of what a lot of that boils down to. Like some parents are like, "Oh, my baby slept through the night at a month." Okay, that's not you. That's your baby. Like that
Yeah.
literally has nothing to do with
Yeah,
you at
you
all.
didn't have anything to do with
Like
that. I'm
either
sorry. I
your baby
mean,
is a good sleeper or is not. Like it literally is not you.
yeah, I mean, my 8-year-old still doesn't sleep through the night. And
Right?
I
Yeah.
would I would go so far as to shoot him with a tranquilizer dart if
Yeah.
I thought that it would make a difference at
Yeah,
this
no.
phase. And you can tell me that your baby slept through the night at 3 weeks, and I will just be like, that's great. Let me just
Good
tell
for
you a
you.
secret.
Yeah.
Next baby
It's
is
not
gonna
going
be
to
wide awake like a vampire at
all night
all
long.
hours, and
Yeah.
be prepared to get broken.
Yep, for sure. So like those are the things that like truly you didn't do anything. And it doesn't really matter. Like that's the other thing. A lot of those milestones when the kids are young, 1, 2, even 3, like none
Mhm.
of those matter. Like your kid's always eventually gonna sleep sometime. Like they're gonna eat because they're hungry. Like doesn't
Yeah.
matter if your kid eats everything under the sun. Like as long
Yeah.
as they're eating, that's the other thing. Oh, my child's 2 and they'll eat anything. Good for you.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and 6 months later, maybe they don't eat anything.
yeah,
I mean, like,
right.
and
Oh,
those
they're going
situations also
cycle.
exist
Yeah.
in both directions. I mean,
Yep.
I've had my kids shift through those things. I've had
Hmm.
them, well, and like, you brought up like 1, 2, 3, the stuff doesn't matter. And,
Hmm.
and I'd like to say that potty training and, and,
Hmm.
and that sort of stuff, in my experience, is all over the place. I
Oh
mean,
gosh. Yeah. Even the twins were all over the board. Like they didn't potty train at the same time at all. So, yeah.
My older son has a summer birthday and had to be potty trained in time for preschool. So
Yep.
he was just over 3. I don't know, judgment, you guys,
Hmm.
but bring it on if you want to judge me for waiting till 3 to potty train my son.
Oh
Uh,
gosh. Honestly,
but
I don't even think the twins were fully potty trained when they went to preschool.
oh no.
They could just hold it that long.
Yeah, no, we
Is
were
really
like
all that it
literally the
was.
car was outside warming up and
Yeah.
he was on the toilet so that he could just go again.
Yeah, when
He
he
would just
comes home.
make it through.
Yep.
Like there was no confidence
Yep.
in
Agreed.
that it was every day was just like, well, we're just going to hope for the best. And
that's what we did
someday they'll call and they'll be like, oh, we had an accident. And I'll be like, what? No.
Oh, no. Yeah.
It never happens.
Yeah. That's very much how it was in it really was like when they're ready. And they eventually figured it out. Like they're 8. They're fine. Yes. They're pretty independent. Like
same. Yes, same. Obviously. I mean, I have an 8-year-old and a almost 11-year-old at this point. So, using the bathroom has eventually come along as being a pretty normal thing. I don't really get a lot of soiled clothing or anything anymore. Thank God.
I mean, once in a while, I swear I still do because they don't even pay attention. Like it's not even like
I'm not going to say
occupied because they want to do something else. And that's been very rare. I haven't really had that in a long time.
You're right. Those are the exceptions, not the rule. But you're right. Nothing is 100%, which is exactly another good point about not being judgmental. Because the moment that you judge a parent for not potty training their kids soon enough is the moment that your kid goes backward and starts wetting the bed every night for 3 months. And you're just like, how did this happen? It's been a year and karma. There might not be a reason. Karma. It just happened. Maybe don't judge. And maybe karma doesn't come to get you. Who knows? Maybe that's true.
Who knows? But potty training was on my list of things. Something else that I hear a decent amount about, or did when my kids were a little bit younger, was like, again, things that you can't control. Oh, my kid is the tallest or the strongest or the whatever size, height, percentile of this, blah, blah, blah. And like, you don't have any control over that, like at all. So
my kids, especially my older son, are very thin. My older son, there was a year where it was like his weight gain between like age 8 and 9 or something, or 7 and 8 was just like a really small amount. And his doctor was like, oh, he didn't really gain that much weight. And then you look at him and he's taller and he's so skinny and you're just kind of like, well. And he wasn't worried. He was just like, well, if it happens 2 years in a row, you should probably have a conversation about nutrition, or finding out if something's going on. Is there some reason he's not gaining weight, or is it just because he's a picky eater and he runs around constantly and he has a high metabolism? Because so do me and my husband.
I was gonna say, if you can look at his dad and you'll be like, oh yeah, I'm not surprised.
I mean, it took my husband almost 40 years to put on a couple of pounds.
Right. So but like, those are the things that I'm like, there's literally no control over that. Like, and I feel like when the kids are really little, more parents, mostly moms, I don't know, maybe dads, maybe because I don't talk to dads, so I don't know. So I should have had my husband weigh in on this, but like, they definitely are like, oh, my child's the 95th percentile in this. And I think I never paid attention to it until the twins were older, because people would say it and I'd be like, oh, that's great. And now I'm like, I did nothing and my kids are huge. Like, so it has, like, there's nothing to brag about with this.
Yeah.
Like,
what was I supposed to do to help?
Nothing.
Like, I feed them meals and I
keep them alive.
Are satisfied. Yes. I never had somebody be like, I didn't eat breakfast or lunch, I'm so hungry. Because that's never happened, because I'm not going to starve my kids.
Yes, I feed my children.
I didn't starve them. That is the milestone, you guys. That is the goal.
Not starve.
Here.
Yes, I fed my children.
Don't starve them. Also feed yourself. I mean, just like
generally
feed them.
We all need to eat. Yeah. But one other thing that I feel like parents are judgmental about is, and I've heard this from people, oh, I only cook homemade meals. We don't eat out. I do. Like, my schedule is such that I can't cook dinner every single night. So
I picked up pizza tonight.
Me too. I mean, same.
I was supposed to get home from work and pick my kids up from school at 3:00. That didn't happen. It went out the window. I had to have somebody else pick them up from school totally randomly. I got home at like 5:00. I had 2 soccer practices on 2 different sides of town that were going to be over at 7. I was just like, well, I mean, what do you want me to do?
Them. Yeah. Exactly.
What am I supposed to give to them at 5:00 when we have to leave the house at 5:15? That's the window. Am I supposed to just give them like a couple pieces of salami and we head out the door? Is that dinner? And so instead,
Yeah.
everybody had like a granola bar,
Mm-hmm.
and we went to soccer practice, and we picked up a
And
pizza on the
then we
way
ate
home,
dinner. Yep.
and we ate at 7:15,
Yep.
and that was dinner.
Oh yeah, we didn't eat till after that because the twins had MMA night. So
Yeah.
me and my husband are currently in a predicament that we have one vehicle because his is in the shop, and we have three kids who often have to be in three or at least two different places. So today I worked, my husband also worked. We dropped off his truck. I went to pick him up. We dropped the twins off at our friend's house who took them to MMA with their daughter. We came back, we got our oldest son from therapy. We went back then with all of us to get the twins from MMA, and then we went out to dinner because what is our other option at this point?
There isn't one.
So, but anyways, there are a handful of moms that I've run into that are all about the I'm going to cook a homemade meal every night and are judgy if you are like, oh, well, I ate out dinner twice this week or
Right.
whatever it is, which is very common for us based on all our activities and things. And I'm like, you know what? I fed my kids. Doesn't really matter. Like
It doesn't.
they're not eating fast food every day, but you know what? Either way, I fed my children.
Yeah.
So
And you know what? No judgment if you cook dinner every night.
yeah,
'Cause
cool. Good for you.
I
Like,
love cooking. I
yeah.
would
it's
enjoy
not that I
cooking
don't
more than I
want
do.
to. That yeah, exactly. That's
Yes.
the thing. It's not my preference to eat out all the time.
Sure.
Sometimes our schedules just don't allow for that.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you
yeah.
can't feed your kids dinner at 9 o'clock at night. It's just
No. Yeah.
they will murder you.
Yeah. Well, and they
if you make
shouldn't-
them wait that long.
Yeah, and then when they have to wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning,
Yeah.
like it's not going to work. So
No.
that one always bugged me. But I've definitely I've encountered some moms that are judgy about those kind of things. So
Well, and here we go. For me, just and I fall on a weird side of this perspective, but like the most judgmental of topics is something that's actually very relevant today is breastfeeding. You know, moms who breastfeed or support the idea of breastfeeding more often than not feel very strongly about everybody breastfeeding their children.
yes.
And I know we've talked about breastfeeding before in more detail, like
Sure.
not
Yep.
just, oh, I breastfed and I didn't, and I did it for this long and I did
Yeah.
this. And we've talked about that in detail. What I'd like to kind of bring up during this conversation is that the amount of opinions on breastfeeding are like so strong, like you're for it, you're against it, you'll die for this cause. And
it really is. Yeah, this is one of the things that like a lot of people who have a very strong opinion, you are just wrong if you don't agree in their eyes, if you did something different. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I said that I felt like this was relevant today because there's a formula shortage in the US, and people are scrambling and people are not able to afford formula, or they're not able to find it. And I'm not going to say who it was because I don't want to go too far, and I don't want to be judgmental, but there was a celebrity who posted on Twitter, a celebrity that is not of parenting age, somebody older. So they had children, but they had children 35 years ago. Okay.
Gotcha. Okay.
There was a celebrity that made a comment on Twitter that said, see, this is why you should breastfeed, as an argument for why this formula shortage, you know, why it shouldn't be a big deal, or, you know, an argument for breastfeeding because formula is hard to get right now. And I just found that to be such a shocking judgment on people for so many reasons. I mean, not only are there women who have had children that struggle to breastfeed for a gajillion different reasons, but there's also foster moms and adoptive parents.
There's lots of people who can't breastfeed. It's not, or there's children who can't take breast milk. Like my daughter needed special formula because she had horrible reflux. So even breast milk for her just didn't agree with her. She needed a medication and special
Yeah.
formula.
Yeah.
And I tried like with the twins, I pumped, but I lasted literally like a month. There was no having any of that.
Pumping is the worst. Everyone can agree with that, even people who
Oh my God, it
breastfeed
was horrible.
consistently. I
Literally
hated
horrible.
pumping. It was,
Yeah.
if it had been my only option, I would have quit that in 2 weeks tops.
Yeah, I did it for over 6 months with my oldest, and then when I went back to work, I stopped. And then with the twins, I just couldn't. Like they were up at different times. I was up every hour and a half. I would feed one of them, then I would pump, and then I would fall asleep for half an hour. Then the other one would wake up.
Oh no.
It just wasn't happening. And because my daughter needed special formula, I was literally doing it for one kid, and I was like, you guys can just be on formula, like you're fine. And they're healthy and fine, and they're definitely not malnourished, and everything worked out. But there's so many reasons that people don't or can't breastfeed, and sometimes it's not a choice, and sometimes it is a choice. And that's okay. All of that is okay.
Yes.
Like that breastfeeding is the best, fine, like whatever. But
and I was about to say the same thing. I mean, sure, I can follow the logic. I can follow the argument that is the benefits of breastfeeding. And full disclosure, I breastfed both of my kids till a year old, successfully with very few problems. I had singletons though, so there's that. But so I fall into the category of people who breastfed exclusively. I don't think my younger child ever had formula, and my older child, I think, had it like twice during a hospital visit, which is a very random long story.
But very really they didn't really have it.
And I still, while I can obviously agree with arguments that breastfeeding has some great benefits,
for sure,
I would never tell someone that it was their only option ever. Ever.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, again, I'm mostly of the formula people. Granted, with my oldest, I did pump for quite a long time. And he did get breast milk for a very long time, but then he eventually moved to formula. I mean, honestly, he was probably 8 months. Like we started introducing foods with our kids earlier than they suggest, I guess, nowadays. I don't even know what their suggestions are anymore. Like, we just did whatever we felt was right, and it worked out. Like it was fine. But as long as they're fed, like as long as they're eating, as long as they're nourished, I really don't care. It doesn't really matter, you know, like, and that's whether it's breast milk formula, whether you're feeding your kids fast food once in a while or making every home cooked meal every day, like as long as you're taking care of your kids and not neglecting them, really doesn't matter. And also, like, what you're feeding your kids is really nothing to brag about. Like, I don't care if your kid eats sushi or if they eat mac and cheese. Like, who cares? They're eating, you know what I mean?
Well, so this is an underlying theme for me in a lot of our episodes, which is that it's really not my job to tell you what to do with your family, with your children, with your free time, with your anything. It's not my job. Now, if I saw you cause harm, that's different.
Different story. If you're neglectful, that's a different story.
That's not judging you. That's looking out for the well-being of another human being. But that's not what we're talking about.
No, not at all.
In general, almost entirely feel like it is not my job to put my opinion or my thoughts into anything that is going on with you unless you straight up ask me. If you're like, oh, I feel like little Johnny isn't getting enough protein, you know, did you ever have an experience like this? Then sure, I can tell you about how I introduced whatever, and my kid really liked that thing, and you could try that. And that's the end. That's not me going, oh, little Johnny doesn't eat protein. Well, he's going to be so weak all the time, and he's not going to have any energy. And what is the benefit of that? What am I doing for you? How does that help you at all?
That is kind of interesting. Like, what do people get out of being judgmental? You know,
is it like a satisfaction? Is it a personal satisfaction?
Some people are just mean. So like maybe superiority. That's probably more
I
it,
mean,
is you feel better than somebody else.
you used the word
Yeah,
brag earlier, and I think
yeah,
that's a lot of it. I mean, I think that
yeah.
like to use the breastfeeding example, not to harp on it too much, but like, if I brag to you that I breastfed my child for the first year of his life,
Hmm.
it makes maybe it makes me feel good, right? Okay, so
Yeah,
that's why I did it, right? But you're my friend. So if I care about you,
right.
why would I say that to somebody who doesn't have literally exactly the same experience as me?
Hmm.
And who does? Does anybody
Yeah, no,
like,
nobody has the same experiences. Not,
no,
I mean,
no,
we're very similar upbringings and had completely different situations with our children. Like, there's, you know what I
absolutely.
mean? So, like, there's very little chance of people having the exact same scenarios. But that is interesting. I think a lot of people, at least in our day and age, are very self-centered. So a lot of
Mhm.
people don't really think outwardly. They think about themselves, but they don't always think about how their words affect other people. And I think that's a lot to do with bragging, whether it be a parent, whether it be bragging about, sports, whether it be
Mhm.
whatever, they think inwardly, not outwardly.
Yeah.
Um, that's there's a lot of these things are very kind of universal that a lot of people will run into. My kid is better at this, or my kid does this, or blah blah blah. One other thing that I find interesting that I'm running into now as my kids are getting older is parents bragging about how good their children are at activities.
Oh, sure.
So, like, I've run into a handful of people that my kids don't play baseball, but
Right.
we've been to a couple of family friends baseball games, and
Mhm.
a couple of people are like, "Oh, my kid is so good at this." And then we go to the game and we're like, "Your kid doesn't even know what they're doing out there."
Oh my
Like,
goodness. Well, and
completely lost.
yeah, well, and let's just point out, and baseball is the best example. Here's me being judgmental.
Yeah.
Baseball is impossible to be good at when you're a kid. Okay. I'm
Oh, yeah.
sorry.
Also,
You're
it's the
not good at
most
it.
kids baseball is probably the most boring sport I've ever watched in my entire life.
Oh
I
my
mean,
goodness.
and this
Absolutely.
is literally not like I'm not judging this. I'm just saying this is factual. Like it is incredibly
Well,
boring to
and
watch.
but you
Like
get to have an opinion about watching kids play
yes,
baseball.
yes.
That's an opinion. That's not a judgment. And you
No,
said
that is my
facts, which
opinion. Okay.
is
That's
maybe
true.
not
It
true.
is my opinion that of all of the children's sporting events that
Yeah.
you can attend, baseball is my
Is
least
Yeah,
favorite.
it's definitely low on my list
It is
of like
brutal. Like,
choice
I've
activities.
watched soccer. Obviously, I watched way too much lacrosse. I've watched
Yeah,
volleyball. Like, I've
yeah.
watched football. Baseball is by far
Oh
my least
goodness.
favorite sport to watch
It's
of
because when you're
children.
not good at baseball, it's hard to watch. I mean, even when the
Yeah,
professionals make mistakes, you're like,
it's
this is
still like,
ugly.
right?
Like,
Yes, yes.
yeah,
But it's
100%.
interesting because, like, very few kids are very good at sports at
Yeah.
this age. Like
Mm-hmm.
they can be okay and they're learning and they get it, but like they're not great at it at all. So like listening to parents brag about how amazing their kid is at some recreational
Yeah,
sport to me is like just like over the top. Like I don't brag that my son is great at lacrosse because he's not. Like he's learning and I'll
sure,
brag like I'll say like, "Oh, he did really good. He got four goals or something like that."
sure,
But
sure.
that's like not saying he's the best on the team. I'm not saying he's great at any of it. Like he did great, he did good on this game.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. But it's just interesting to me when I hear parents talk about how amazing their kids are at really any of that stuff. Oh, their test scores are great, or their reading level is great, or any of those things. I'm just like, that's awesome for your kid. I'd actually rather hear your kid be proud about it than you brag about it.
Sure,
So maybe
that's
that's just a
great.
different
Yeah,
perspective. Like if somebody wants to be like, I got 100 on my math test, I would be happy to be like, awesome job, dude. Like, but it's different coming from the person who did it than it is being like, my kid is so good at this.
Yeah. Well, and that's a really great point what you just said about like your kids being proud of accomplishments and what the difference is there between me bragging about my child walking earlier than your kid versus my child like telling you about some accomplishments. For example, my son, who's about to go to middle school, got a letter in the mail from the middle school that he has been invited to take some honors classes.
Awesome.
This is awesome. Great. I knew he could do it. I was hoping it would happen.
Yeah.
And he has told every adult he has seen since we got the letter.
And he's proud of it.
Yeah.
That I can fully support. Yeah.
My friend who had to randomly pick him up today because I was dealing with drama at work.
Yes.
He told her, I walked in and he was just like, Mommy, what honors classes did I get into in middle school? And I was like, oh, you got into both of them. There's an English one and there's a mathematics one. You got into both. And he was just like, I got into both, Linda. Aww. And she was just like, that is so awesome. You're so smart. Good job. Way to go, man.
See, that I can totally get behind. But like, and I get that parents want to brag about their kids. I understand. Like, it's human nature.
Sure.
I think I'm probably a little bit more sensitive because obviously my oldest never hits any of those milestones. Like, the biggest thing that we get proud of with him is like he asked for something with a full sentence and in the correct context. Right. Like, very different than a lot of other kids his age. So when parents do kind of go overboard with the, oh, my kid did this, this, and this.
Yeah, it wears on you.
Kind of like, that's fine, like, good for him. Right. But it is a like, my kid will never meet those milestones type of thing. So it's a different perspective I have than other parents who have average kids, and I try and be more cognizant of that with the twins. I definitely though have bragged about my kids probably in times that wasn't necessarily appropriate. I've talked about them doing good in things, or my son having whatever, being able to doing really well in reading. But I try and put it in a context of like, let him be proud of himself, or ask for things like, I have mentioned my son's reading level, but it's more of a who has book suggestions for this, or where can I get some information? Like, and it might seem like it's bragging sometimes, but I'm really trying not to, because you never know what parents will have kids like my oldest who really don't hit those milestones and might feel down because their kid won't. I've definitely been in that scenario. So and it's one thing to be proud about your kids accomplishing things. It's another thing to be proud of things that there's like my kid grew, or my kid eats food, or like those things
some
nobody
random
has anybody no control over. It's not something they worked at. It's one thing if they're like working hard at something and you're like, oh, he did awesome, I'm really proud of him.
Honors,
that's awesome, I'm proud of him. But it's another thing to be like, my kid's in the 95th percentile and I've done nothing, or he's done nothing to get to that point. Like, there's nothing to be proud of. And maybe that's the difference, whether you should be proud of something. Like, you don't need to be proud to breastfeed. Like, you don't need to be proud to be a stay-at-home mom. You don't need to be proud to do things that no one really has any control over when you're hitting certain early milestones. Be proud of them, kids working really hard and accomplishing something big. Those things I can definitely get behind. So I guess maybe that's the line where it's judgmental versus just being a proud parent.
A parent. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
Let's move on from judgment and our gripes with judgmental parents, which hopefully we can grow and learn from this experience and not be judgmental on our own. And let's try Gorilla Cookies, which is an imperial stout with hazelnut, which I poured mine, by the way.
Okay.
And yikes, and cinnamon, coffee, and cocoa nibs. So let's give this a go. And see where we land on it. Yeah.
Woo, this hazelnut. One they made in a little can before too. Oh wow, I smell hazelnut, cinnamon.
Yes.
Holy cow.
And that's the taste I get. I get a little cocoa nibs as well in the taste. So I get that as well. So what do you think?
I'm getting all the flavors. I definitely, man, that hazelnut to me is strong aroma
I
though.
know.
Like that's jumping out at my nose. But I get all the flavors in here. Hold on. I get a little coffee. I think the cocoa cuts the coffee a little bit. And I'm definitely getting the hazelnut and the cinnamon, and it's quite tasty.
Yeah, I like it. This is a solid stout. I like the adjuncts. I get a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
And you know, it's doing it for me.
11% ABV. So,
Yeah.
you know.
So I do get a little bit of the alcohol, but it's pretty mild. It's a very
it's not a
smooth
heavy
stout.
burn. Like,
No.
yeah. No, this is really tasty. I definitely enjoy this quite a bit. So yeah, gorilla cookies. All right. It's got a cookie with a gorilla face on it. I like it.
Yeah.
It's cute.
Yeah. Well, let's let's call it there, you guys. Thanks for joining us again, and we'll catch you on the next one. And
yeah, check out St. Errant.
Lauren.
Check out St. Errant if you get a chance. So thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening to the latest musings from Parenting by the Pint.
Be sure to find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to us wherever you find your podcasts.
Have a great week, and cheers to you all.